Do you know the different ways that you can roll over monies from an old employer plan to a 401k or an IRA of your choosing? Hi, I'm Garrett Ray, financial planner here at the Wealth Guardians and the Ray Financial Group.
And I'm Brice Payne, and you've entered The Vault, the Wealth Guardians video series on all things pertaining to retirement planning. In this episode, we're going to cover the different types of rollover options that you might have: direct rollovers, in-service rollovers, and what are called 60-day or indirect rollovers.
Yeah.
Don't forget to hit these like and subscribe buttons down below here if you want to go ahead and catch future episodes of The Vault with Doug, Garrett, and myself. And Garrett, let's go ahead and talk about rollovers here. Let me get the ball started and just clarify for everybody what a rollover is.
Yeah, let's do that.
And that is taking money out of your employer-sponsored plan, whether that's a 401k, a 403b, a 401a, a 457 plan, a TSP account, any employer-sponsored plan out there, whether it's private or government, federal government, state government, taking money out of that plan and moving it over out of there either to an IRA or another employer-sponsored plan in a way that there are no taxable events in
That's
doing
right.
that.
Yep.
Really the sensible way of doing it. So there's really three main ways, Garrett, of doing this. And the first one that we'll talk about is the easiest of them all, the simplest, the basic, a direct rollover. What are we talking about here?
So let's get into the direct rollover. Direct rollover is, by the way, a lot of the folks that we talk to are planning for retirement or thinking about retiring soon. A direct rollover may not necessarily be for a retiree. Let's take the example of you're 35 years old and you've worked two jobs prior to your current job that you're in. Now you have two options ahead of you. Your current employer may say, you know what, we can accept rollovers from your previous two plans. That's one thing. You could go from two old 401ks into your current 401k. Or let's say you've decided to establish an IRA of your own at a different custodian. Well, the direct rollover simply says that you can take these old 401ks or old employer plans that you have, and you can roll that money over into either your current employer plan or the IRA that you've already established. And the process looks something like this. You would essentially get in contact with your old employer plan's custodian, Fidelity, Empower, there's a lot of them out there. Find out who your old employer plan was custodized at, and you can either contact them online or through a phone call, and they will essentially write a check payable to either your current employer plan's custodian or the IRA that you have already established where that custodian is. So let's say I've established an IRA at Fidelity, and I'm calling up Empower, who has my old employer plan. I would have that check made payable to Fidelity,
Right.
FBO me, for the benefit of me. So now we have one institution cutting the check to another financial institution. That's how we make it a non-taxable event.
Right.
That's key there, okay?
Your current custodian won't tell the IRS it's a taxable event as long as they're not making the check out to you.
Yep. And so there's lots of folks that we encounter in our practice where they've worked 3, 4, 5 different jobs and they've got 3 or 4 or 5 different 401ks out there, and they really want to consolidate assets all under one roof. Well, this is one way that you can certainly do that. Obviously, of course, a direct rollover is eligible for anyone who, let's say you've worked at the same company for 40 years and you've hit that retirement mark. You're no longer an employee, you are officially retired. Well, then that direct rollover process, if you wanted to move that money out of that employer plan into another IRA or Roth of your choosing, is eligible, of course.
Very good. All right. So the first step of that, like you said, would be to open up the new account.
Yep.
Just so it's there. So when you do get the check, you're ready to deposit it into that new account.
Absolutely.
That's a direct rollover. Okay. Very good. And that's the way 95% of rollovers are done, is
Absolutely.
that direct rollover way.
Yep.
Okay. Now that's talking about your old 401ks.
Right.
But what if you're still working with an employer? Let's talk about an in-service rollover, which is talking really about your current employer's 401k. This one's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people.
Absolutely. So the in-service rollover, let's go back to that case where we had the dedicated 40-year employee. They started working when they were 20 years old. They're still there when they're 60 years old, and they're starting to think about retirement. And while the company's been good to them over that 40 years, they know that the options inside of their 401k might be limited, and so they're seeking some additional guidance on that. Well, once someone turns the age of 59 and a half, A lot of employers allow their employees to roll over either all or a portion of what's inside of their 401k out to an IRA that the employee has established, or potentially a Roth, and still, if so long as they remain an employee, they are still eligible to participate in the employer's plan. So now we get the best of both worlds. You're basically taking your money and you're rolling it out to an IRA or a Roth of your choosing, invested in the way that you like. But as long as you remain an employee, you still get the benefit potentially of a company match inside of your 401k and all the things that we like about 401ks while you're still an employee. This is eligible when someone turns 59 and a half years old or older. You're still an employee of the company where you house your 401k. And essentially what this allows you to do is it allows you to remain an employee and keep on that benefit program.
Sounds perfectly normal. A lot of people are not aware that an in-service rollover is an option for you if you're 59 and a half, because it didn't exist until after the financial crisis.
Yeah, 2008, 2009.
No company allowed that before then. So many people got hurt in their 401ks because they didn't have a lot of, they wanted to move out of the market, but they didn't have the options as far as their mutual funds were available. So they lost money. There were some lawsuits that went on, and now in-service rollovers are generally allowed, at least at your larger companies. If you're going to work at a smaller company, you'll have to ask your HR department if it's an option. If it is, then what Garrett just described is a second way that you can do a rollover.
Yeah, and thank you for that little bit of advice, Brice. This isn't all employers, but it is probably 90% of employers out there offer this. The way to find out, contact your benefits coordinator at your employer. He or she would know, or simply call up your current custodian. So if you have your 401k at Fidelity, call up Fidelity and they'll let you know if that 401k program is eligible for an in-service rollover.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about the third one, Garrett. Let's play with fire here. Let's talk about a 60-day rollover. What is this? How is this different than a direct rollover?
Okay, so 60-day rollover differs in this. So a direct rollover and an in-service rollover, we're talking about going from a financial institution to another financial institution. The 60-day rollover varies in this way. You are allowed to take a distribution or a 60-day rollover from the financial institution. Let's say you have a 401k and they are at Vanguard. Vanguard can write you, Joe Smith, a check that you take that check and you deposit it into your bank at checking or savings account, okay? You can do what you will in that 60 days with that money. The only caveat is that you have to basically take that money or what you choose to put back into either a 401k, an IRA, a Roth of your choosing within 60 days to eliminate the taxable event. So let's do a hypothetical scenario. Let's say Joe Smith gets a check cut to him for $100,000, okay? He deposits it at his bank. He decides that he's going to essentially use $20,000 to whatever he wants. But then he writes a check within 60 days to go back to a financial institution, let's say Fidelity, for $80,000. Well, what has he done here? He's taken $100,000 out, which would normally be a taxable event for $100,000 of income in that year. He deposits $80,000 back, basically eliminating the taxable event for that $80,000, knowing that he's taking on the tax burden of that additional $20,000 that he spent to his choosing.
Do you see me poking the hornet's nest here? I'm poking the hornet's nest and I'm warming my hands by the fire that we're about to throw kindling on that fire. I say that, Garrett, as you are well aware, because we have had clients, this story is as old as time itself, of people thinking, well, let me take money out of my IRA or out of my 401k, have the check made out to me, and I'll easily get the money back into my IRA or 401k within 60 days, and it won't be a taxable event at all. No problem. 60 days goes by, the client still hasn't gotten their money back into the 401k or IRA, and boom, it's a taxable event. We've seen it happen to more than one client.
Too many good people out there.
If you have any way of not trying to poke that hornet's nest or not trying to play with that fire, I would recommend you go some other route, but it can be done.
It is out there. It exists. It's out there.
So that 60 days starts, interestingly enough, not from the time that they cut you the check, but from the time that you receive the check. Well, how does the IRS know when you receive the check? When do they know to start that clock ticking. So maybe if it's 65 days, you could make the argument that I didn't receive the check until 5 days.
Right.
Certainly don't recommend that you tell tales to the IRS, but maybe they are in coordination with the United States Postal Service. I don't know, but I don't want to be the one to try to find out.
Yep.
So that covers us, Garrett, on direct rollovers. Easy.
Yep.
No problem. Very basic, 95% of them. In-service rollovers, which a lot of people are not aware that they can do if they're
new,
59.
but also easy.
Easy as well.
Yep.
Assuming that the employer allows it.
Yep.
And then the hornet's nest one of the 60-day rollover is a last result if you have to. And by the way, that 60-day rollover you can only do once a year. Don't think that you can take money out of your IRA or 401k and put it back into an IRA or 401k within 59 days and then do it again a week later or even 6 months later. It's only once a calendar year that you can do that. So don't burn that bridge if you don't need to.
Yep.
Anything else we want to add about rollovers there, Garrett?
No, that's it. It's been a good episode.
We've talked about rollovers before. There's an episode I'm pointing to right there that'll get you to that, and we'll do future episodes on rollovers again, I'm sure. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Vault. Again, I'll bring your attention to these like and subscribe buttons down below the screen there. Go ahead and click on those if you are so inclined to catch future episodes with Doug, Garrett, and myself. And that's going to wrap it up. I'm Brice Payne.
And I'm Garrett Ray.
And this has been The Vault.